Now the American companies are back again, like they're back here. They're malignant. They metastasize. They spread around the world, spreading their poisons everywhere and polluting the atmosphere. Will the financial meltdown affect them? I doubt it. They fund the campaigns in America. They're funding the Democratic and Republican presidential campaign. How are we going to stop it? The only way we can stop it is if the grassroots rise up. And how do we educate the grassroots? As Jefferson said, an informed democracy behaves in a responsible fashion. How do you inform the democracy without the cooperation of the media, particularly Fox, who is owned by my compatriot, Rupert Murdoch, who's a sociopath? He is. He's a sociopath. He's got 2 little girls. Wouldn't you have thought that his love for those children would be so great? He'd used his influence, broadcasting to 2/3 of the world's population, to do the right thing? No. I can tell you his family history. He championed me once. He created my career. And then something happened to him in 1975, like he had a breakdown or, I don't know, something, and he changed and became extremely conservative. I talk like this because the etiology or the cause of the problems and pathology facing our beloved planet is these blokes' minds. It's their midbrains, I suppose, where the emotions are engendered. So all we do is use our cortex to rationalise what our midbrains want us to do. I want to write a book called Why Men Kill, and I'll go into this in more detail and depth. I don't understand, but it's worth looking at, because unless we understand our behaviour and the etiology of our behaviour, we'll never fix it. And I do know that every person's capable of greatness. I see them as patients. I see them on their deathbeds. I see them when their children are dying. Every person has pure love within them and generosity. But they don't tap it much because they sort of join the ethos of society. Now, I'm sorry I've raved a bit. I'm just sort of letting off steam, having spent time with your ministers. Anyway, I've kind of covered global warming, and you now have your marching orders. There's a fantastic group in Calgary called Cause. There's a very good group here. You mobilise every single one of you. You change your lives and you stop this province sucking up the oil, burning the coal and digging up the tar sands. You stop it. Now, can you? Well, I came to America and I was a naive young doctor, having stopped uranium mining in Australia by talking to the miners about the medical effects of radiation upon their testicles. Stop them. And I was serious. I came to America and was worried about nuclear war, and everyone said it's better to be dead than red. And I said, well, what about the pygmies in Africa? And they said, no, they don't want to be communists either. Better they're dead too. This is true. So we started, the doctors, dropping bombs on Boston and having wonderful symposia at Harvard and stuff. And so they'd wake up the next morning, there'd be a map of Boston with the concentric circles of vaporisation and burns and stuff, and they'd say, I don't think this is very good for our health. And the Catholic bishops would wake up and look at the paper and say, I don't think Jesus would like this. And they wrote a wonderful pastoral letter on nuclear war, and so did the Methodist bishops. And we started groups like psychologists and businessmen who said nuclear was bad for business, and all sorts of groups. And finally I was asked to speak to the annual morticians meeting. And I said, well, why do you want me to speak to you? And they said, well, we don't want to have to embalm radioactive bodies. And we said, well, don't worry, you'll be one yourself. So in 5 years, I kid you not, in 5 years, for most people supporting the concept of nuclear war in an ignorant fashion, 80% of people opposed it. That was the Second American Revolution. Peaceful, sagacious, and well-informed. That wasn't shooting a few redcoats, by God. We turned the thing upside down and we ended the Cold War. So one person, this stupid, naive Australian doctor, led the movement. Because you know why? I could feel the heat of those bombs. I read on the beach when I was 15. I had 3 children. As a doctor, it was so obvious to me. So I set off, and the naivety was useful, and I didn't care whether people liked me or not. I wasn't nice to seek approval, I just spoke the truth. And the truth rings down the ages like a bell, and people understand the truth, they resonate with it. And you know, instead of needing to be approved and having all your teeth straight and saying have a nice day and, you know, have a lovely day and stuff, you become a leader and people like you. It's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. So I'm just telling you that my experience means that any one of you can be a Joan or John of Arc in your province. Takes guts, I suppose, just takes strength, that's all. Okay, so now we've done global warming, now we're going to do nuclear power. And I'm going to move to this whiteboard. I use this as a prop. I hate PowerPoints because everyone goes to sleep. And anyway, all you're doing is reading from the PowerPoint and everyone can read it anyway, so it's duplicative and doesn't work. All right, so uranium is the fuel for nuclear weapons. Can you see that? Oh, we need to bring it forward. Yeah, okay, thanks. Can you see that? Can you all? Can you? Can you? Okay. You've got lots of uranium in Canada. In fact, the first nuclear weapons were made from your uranium. Your uranium in Saskatchewan is so rich you don't even have to enrich it. It's extremely powerful. Uranium has 2 basic isotopes or elements, 235 and 238. 235 is present in only 0.7% and must be enriched to 3% for use in nuclear power, although your CANDU reactors use non-enriched uranium and they make very pure plutonium, which India made its first bomb from. Okay? That's called proliferation. But uranium decays to a series of daughters, one of which is radon, which is a gas, which is a potent carcinogen. It's radioactive, so when the miners inhale it, lodges in their lung, irradiating a few cells, causing cancer. So 30 to 50% of men who've mined uranium have died of lung cancer. That's a lot. The other element is radium. Madame Curie isolated radium by stirring pitch blende, and she was so fascinated by it, she used to walk around with a little piece of it in her pocket, playing with it in her lab coat. Radium is an alpha emitter, it's very radioactive, and it's a calcium analogue. In other words, the body thinks it's calcium and it goes to bone, where it irradiates bone cells and blood-forming cells. She died of leukemia. Her daughter, who also worked with radium, died of leukemia. Radiation causes cancer. The old radiologists, when they used to test the beam of the X-ray by putting their hand under it and looking at their bones, many of them died of cancer. I mean, the medical literature is replete with how radiation causes cancer. And the other thing is that the uranium ore phase gives off continually gamma radiation like X-rays, so the men are exposed to whole body radiation, low dose, but their testicles get irradiated. Testicles are the most important organs in the male body because they contain the genes for all future generations, like our eggs. And it's medically contraindicated to irradiate testicles. So when I went to talk to the miners, when they were mining uranium and they liked mining it, they had a nice town and a nice swimming pool, they got a lot of money, and I talked about that, that was it. Their wives dragged them out, they never went there again. They set up a health clinic. One young man came to me, he said, I'm 26, I'm already excreting radium in my urine. Both my parents died of cancer, what does that mean? And I just couldn't tell him the truth, that he was at tremendous risk of getting cancer.